The communication array on the Viridian command ship picked up the signal 3 days before the humans arrived. Ambassador Zelmoth stood in the analysis chamber, his 4 eyes scanning the data streams that flowed across the crystalline displays. The transmissions came from the human vessel, standard diplomatic protocols mixed with military communications. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance. Then Zelmoth opened the combat footage files. His breathing organs constricted as he watched human soldiers move through a battle scenario. They were not just fighting. They were enjoying it. One human laughed while explosives detonated around him. Another made casual conversation while eliminating targets with brutal efficiency. A third stopped mid-combat to eat something, then continued fighting as if nothing had interrupted him. Zelmoth had studied warfare for 40 cycles. He had seen countless species in combat. But this was different. These humans moved like predators, but they thought like something else entirely. Something that made his survival instincts scream warnings. He forwarded the files to the High Command with a priority tag. The response came within hours. Proceed with diplomatic contact, but maintain maximum security protocols. The human ship arrived exactly on schedule. It was smaller than expected, sleek and dark against the stars. The Viridians had prepared an entire security battalion for the reception. Standard procedure for first contact with an unknown military power. Commander Jake Morrison was the first human to step through the airlock. He was tall by human standards, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He smiled at the Viridian reception committee, showing teeth. The gesture was meant to be friendly, but several Viridians instinctively stepped back. Behind him came Captain Lisa Martinez, a woman with sharp features and an expression that revealed nothing. Then Lieutenant Derek Hayes, younger than the others, with an energy that made the Viridians nervous for reasons they could not explain. Jake extended his hand toward Zelmoth. The ambassador understood this was a human greeting ritual. He reached out with his primary manipulator appendage, and Jake gripped it firmly. The human strength was surprising, but controlled. Everything about these humans seemed controlled, like weapons kept in safety mode. Ambassador Zelmoth, Jake said. His voice was pleasant, almost warm. It's an honor to meet you. Earth sends its greetings to the Viridian Empire. The honor is ours, Commander Morrison, Zelmoth replied. He had practiced human vocal patterns for weeks. Welcome to the Celestial Pride. The tour of the ship proceeded according to plan. The humans asked appropriate questions about Viridian technology and culture. They complimented the ship's design. They behaved exactly as diplomats should. Yet something felt wrong to every Viridian who encountered them. It was the way Jake's eyes tracked movement. The way Lisa positioned herself to have clear sight lines in every room. The way Derek's hands stayed near his belt, even though he carried no visible weapons. These were not just diplomats. These were soldiers pretending to be diplomats, and they were not very good at pretending. The incident happened in the training facility. Security Commander Vec Roll had insisted on showing the humans the Viridian combat systems. It was meant to be a subtle display of strength, a reminder that the Empire was not defenseless. The demonstration involved holographic opponents and non-lethal energy weapons. Vecrol's best soldiers ran through a standard combat scenario, eliminating targets with professional efficiency. When they finished, Vikrol turned to the humans, expecting impressed reactions. Instead, Jake was smiling again. That was impressive, he said. Very coordinated. May I try? Vekrol hesitated. Allowing an outsider into their combat system seemed unwise. But refusing might be seen as hostile. He agreed, expecting the human to perform adequately at best. Jake stepped into the training arena. He requested no instructions, no explanation of the controls. He simply picked up a training weapon and nodded to indicate he was ready. The simulation began at standard difficulty. Holographic enemies appeared from multiple directions. Jake moved, and the entire room went silent. He did not fight like the Viridians. He did not maintain defensive positions or use cover efficiently. Instead, he moved forward, constantly forward, like something that could not be stopped. He eliminated targets with minimal motion, each shot precise. But it was not the efficiency that horrified the watching Viridians. It was the expression on his face. Jake was enjoying himself. He laughed when multiple enemies appeared at once. He made small comments under his breath, treating the simulation like a game. When he finished the scenario in half the time the Viridian soldiers had needed, he turned back to Vekrul and asked if there was a harder difficulty setting. Vekrul increased the difficulty to maximum. Scenarios that typically defeated even experienced Viridian soldiers. Jake ran through them like they were minor inconveniences. At one point, he narrated his actions out loud, explaining human combat doctrine while simultaneously demonstrating it. "The key is not to avoid damage," Jake said, dodging an attack. "It's to accept that you might get hurt and not let that stop you." He eliminated 3 targets in rapid succession. Most species think tactically. They analyze, plan, execute. Humans do that too, but we also have this other mode. He rolled under simulated fire and came up shooting. We call it going kinetic. You stop thinking and just act. It looks crazy from the outside, but it's actually very calculated chaos. When the simulation ended, Jake was breathing hard, but still smiling. He handed the weapon back to Vekrul, who took it with a trembling appendage. "Thanks for letting me try that," Jake said. "It's been too long since I had a good workout." That night, the Viridian High Command convened an emergency session. Admiral Krenvis watched the training footage 3 times before speaking. His voice was steady, but his body language betrayed his fear. "These are not diplomats," he said. "These are predators in uniforms. The humans are either insane by our standards, or they have somehow weaponized insanity. They have not threatened us," another council member pointed out. "Their behavior is unusual, but not hostile." "Not hostile?" Krenvis played the footage again. "Watch how that human moves. Watch his face. He is not fighting to defend anything. He is fighting because he enjoys it. Now imagine 1,000,000 of these creatures with advanced weapons. Imagine them angry." The council chamber fell silent. The implications were clear. Humanity was either the galaxy's greatest potential ally or its worst nightmare. Possibly both. In his quarters, Jake Morrison reviewed his mission briefing one more time. Earth's instructions were clear. Make first contact. Establish diplomatic relations. And make absolutely certain the Viridian Empire understood that humanity was not to be threatened. He had not lied to the Viridians. He had not threatened them. He had simply been himself. And sometimes, being human was the most effective weapon of all. Jake closed the briefing file and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more opportunities to show the Viridians what humanity was capable of. He looked forward to it. The Viridians wanted to understand humans. He would give them understanding, whether they wanted it or not. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere among them was Earth, watching and waiting. The homeworld had sent its message to the galaxy. The message was simple. Humanity had arrived, and the old rules no longer applied. The news spread through Viridian space faster than light travel. Within 2 weeks, every member species of the Empire had heard about the humans. The stories grew with each telling, but the core truth remained unchanged. Earth had sent representatives who fought like demons and smiled while doing it. Ambassador Zelmuth found himself fielding communications from across the galaxy. A Threxian merchant captain contacted him, insisting on sharing his own human encounter. The captain's ship had suffered a pirate attack 3 months earlier. A human vessel had responded to the distress call. They asked if we needed help, the Threxian captain said, his translator struggling with his agitated tone. When we confirmed, they said they would handle it. Handle it. They made it sound like routine maintenance. Then we watched them engage the pirates. The captain sent footage. Zelmuth watched human soldiers board the pirate vessel with what could only be described as enthusiasm. They moved through the corridors like they were exploring an amusement park rather than a hostile ship. One human stopped mid-combat to examine an explosive device, commented that it was interesting, then casually disarmed it before continuing forward. They were playing, the Threxian captain insisted. They treated a life-or-death situation like a game. When it was over, they asked if we needed anything else, as if they had just delivered supplies rather than cleared an entire pirate crew. More stories came. A Kovali research team had worked alongside human scientists for 6 months. The Korvali reported that humans casually discussed their own biology in ways that disturb other species. They described pain thresholds, injury recovery times, and survival limits with clinical detachment. One human medical officer had explained, unprompted, exactly how long a human could survive in vacuum without a suit. The galaxy was beginning to understand something fundamental about humans. They were not cruel. They were not bloodthirsty. They were simply comfortable with violence in a way no other species was. Captain Lisa Martinez sat across from 3 Viridian strategic analysts in a secure conference room. They had requested a briefing on human military philosophy. Lisa had agreed, knowing this was exactly what Earth wanted. Understanding would breed respect. Respect would breed caution. "Your combat footage disturbs us," the lead analyst said. His name was Thornax, and he had studied military theory for his entire career. "Your soldiers show behavior patterns that we associate with severe psychological disorders." Lisa nodded. "I understand. Can you be more specific about what concerns you?" "They laugh during combat," Thornax said. "They take unnecessary risks. They seem to seek danger rather than avoid it. By our standards, they would be classified as unstable and unfit for military service." "By your standards," Lisa agreed. "But humans are not Viridians. Our psychology developed differently. Let me ask you something. How do Viridian soldiers handle fear?" "They are trained to suppress it," Thornax said. "Fear leads to poor decision-making, so we teach emotional control." "Humans do something different," Lisa explained. "We do not suppress fear. We redirect it. Fear creates adrenaline, increases reaction speed, sharpens focus. We train our soldiers to use that biological response as a tool. What you see as instability is actually controlled aggression." "Controlled," one of the other analysts said skeptically. That human in the training facility did not appear controlled. "Commander Morrison was completely in control," Lisa said. "Every action was calculated. He was not fighting randomly. He was demonstrating human capabilities in a way you would understand. And judging by your reaction, it worked." The analysts exchanged glances. Lisa continued, "Human military training is designed around a simple principle. We put soldiers in dangerous situations repeatedly until danger becomes familiar. Not comfortable, but familiar. A human soldier in combat has usually experienced worse conditions in training. This gives them confidence that looks like recklessness to species that train differently." "You intentionally traumatize your own soldiers?" Thornax asked. "We prepare them," Lisa corrected. "There is a difference. A Viridian soldier learns tactics and weapons operation. A human soldier learns those things plus how to function when exhausted, injured, and terrified. We train for worst-case scenarios because human history taught us that worst-case scenarios happen regularly." She pulled up a data file and shared it with the analysts. "This is Earth. Notice anything unusual? The Viridians studied the planetary data. Multiple climate zones, extreme weather patterns, predators in nearly every ecosystem, diseases, natural disasters. Thornax made a sound that his translator rendered as distressed comprehension. Your homeworld is classified as a death world, he said. Class 9 hazard rating. How did your species survive to space age? By being stubborn, Lisa said, and by developing certain traits that help with survival. Aggression, adaptability, pattern recognition, and the ability to cooperate despite individual differences. Humans evolved to handle constant danger. Modern warfare just channels those existing traits. The briefing continued for 3 hours. By the end, the Viridian analysts understood the situation better, but their fear had not decreased. If anything, it had grown. They now knew that human behavior was not aberrant. It was normal for their species. Every human had the potential to act like their soldiers. Lieutenant Derek Hayes stood in the simulation chamber, surrounded by Viridian military observers. The Empire had proposed joint military exercises. Derek had volunteered immediately, much to the concern of his superiors. The scenario was straightforward. 2 teams, human and Viridian, competing to complete objectives in a simulated urban environment. The Viridian team had 12 members, all experienced soldiers. The human team was just Derek. You want to even the numbers? The Viridian exercise coordinator asked. No need, Derek said cheerfully. I like a challenge. The simulation began. The Viridian team moved according to standard doctrine. They established a perimeter, sent scouts forward, maintained communication protocols. They were efficient, professional, and predictable. Derek did not follow any recognizable pattern. He moved through the simulation like water, finding cracks in stone. When the Viridian team secured a building, he was already on the roof. When they advanced down a street, he came from underground access tunnels. He did not fight them directly. He simply appeared, completed objectives, and vanished before they could respond. The Viridians tried adapting their tactics. They split into smaller groups. Derek picked them off individually. They consolidated their forces. Derek ignored them and completed objectives while they reorganized. They set traps. Derek triggered them deliberately and escaped through routes they had not considered possible. What disturbed the observers most was Derek's attitude. He talked to himself during the exercise, offering commentary on his own actions, like he was narrating a sports event. He made jokes. At one point, he apologized to a simulated opponent before eliminating them, then explained that his grandfather had taught him to be polite even during violence. When the exercise ended, Derek had completed all objectives while the Viridian team was still trying to locate him. The scoreboard was not close. It was a massacre rendered in numbers. Derek removed his equipment and approached the Viridian team. They backed away instinctively. He stopped, raised his hands in a peaceful gesture, and smiled. Good effort, he said. You guys are really coordinated. Much better than some human units I have trained with. You just think too much like Viridians. What does that mean? One of the Viridian soldiers asked. You assume your opponents will be logical, Derek explained. That they will value their lives, avoid unnecessary risks, follow predictable patterns. Human soldiers are trained to exploit those assumptions. We do not fight the way enemies expect us to fight. We fight the way that works, even if it looks crazy. Back on his ship, Commander Jake Morrison read the exercise reports with satisfaction. Derek had performed exactly as expected. The Viridians now understood that even a single human could devastate a larger, well-trained force through unconventional tactics and sheer audacity. A priority message arrived from the Viridian High Command. They requested formal negotiations for a mutual defense agreement. The wording was carefully diplomatic, but the subtext was clear. The Empire wanted humanity as an ally because the alternative was too frightening to consider. Jake composed his response with equal care. Earth accepted the proposal. Negotiations would begin immediately. The terms would be favorable to both parties because humans understood the value of cooperation. He sent the message and leaned back in his chair. The mission was succeeding beyond expectations. Earth had not needed to demonstrate superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They had simply shown what humans were capable of and let the Viridians draw their own conclusions. Those conclusions were exactly what Earth wanted. Humanity was dangerous. Humanity was unpredictable. Humanity was not to be threatened. And now, the Viridian Empire would spread that message throughout the galaxy. Other species would hear. Other governments would take notice. Earth had announced its arrival, not with weapons, but with truth. The truth that humans were survivors from a death world, that they had turned their survival instincts into military doctrine, that they could be the best allies or the worst enemies. Intelligence officers in Para made her decision in the quiet hours of the night cycle. She had reviewed all available data on humans. She had watched the footage, read the reports, analyze the tactical assessments. None of it provided real understanding. She needed to see Earth herself, to walk among humans in their own environment. Only then could she truly assess the threat they represented. The Viridian Council approved her request with obvious reluctance. They provided her with an escort ship, diplomatic credentials, and strict instructions to avoid conflict. They also provided emergency extraction protocols in case humans proved more dangerous than anticipated. Zimpara's ship entered Earth's solar system 3 weeks later. Her first view of humanity's homeworld came through the observation screen, and she felt her breathing organs contract with instinctive fear. The planet was beautiful and terrible. Massive oceans, extreme weather systems, dense forests that looked capable of hiding countless predators. Even from orbit, Earth radiated danger. Human traffic control guided her ship to a landing facility near a city called Denver. The human official who greeted her was friendly and professional. Nothing about his behavior suggested the capacity for violence she had seen in the combat footage. This was more disturbing than if he had been obviously threatening. "Welcome to Earth," the official said. His name was Peter Chang, and he worked for the diplomatic services. "We have arranged accommodation for you with a host family. We thought you might learn more about humans through immersion rather than formal briefings." Zinpara agreed, though the idea of staying in a human dwelling made her nervous. Peter escorted her through the city, pointing out various features with obvious pride. The architecture was diverse, combining practical function with artistic expression. Humans moved through the streets casually, showing no signs of the constant vigilance she expected from Death World survivors. The host family lived in a residential area outside the city center. The house was modest but well-maintained, surrounded by green vegetation that Zinpara's scanner identified as non-threatening ornamental plants. Peter knocked on the door, and a human male answered. "You must be Zinpara," the man said warmly. "I am Andrew Carter. Please, come in. My wife Helen is preparing dinner." Andrew Carter was in his 50s by human standards, with gray threading through his dark hair. He moved with casual confidence, gesturing for Zinpara to follow him inside. The house interior was comfortable, filled with objects that suggested long habitation. Photographs on the walls showed family gatherings, children at various ages, landscapes of Earth's diverse ecosystems. Helen Carter emerged from what Zinpara identified as a food preparation area. She was approximately the same age as Andrew, with kind eyes and welcoming body language. Two smaller humans appeared behind her, children perhaps 10 and 12 years old by human developmental standards. "These are our grandchildren," Helen explained. "Emma and Lucas. They are visiting for the week." The children stared at Zinpara with open curiosity, showing no fear of the alien in their home. Emma, the older one, asked if Zinpara could tell them about Viridian planets. Lucas wanted to know if all aliens had 4 eyes. Dinner was a revelation. The family ate together, sharing food and conversation in equal measure. They asked Zinpara questions about her homeworld, her work, her impressions of Earth. They answered her questions with honest directness, showing no indication that they were concealing anything. "You have children living in your home," Zinpara observed. "Are you not concerned about exposing them to a stranger?" "Peter vouched for you," Andrew said simply. "Besides, it is good for kids to meet people from other worlds. Helps them understand that the galaxy is bigger than one planet. And if I were dangerous?" Zinpara pressed. Andrew's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something old and hard that had not been visible before. "Then we would handle it," he said calmly. "But you are not dangerous. You are a guest." That night, after the children had gone to bed, Zinpara sat with Andrew and Helen in their living area. She decided to ask the question that had been troubling her since arrival. "I reviewed your background before coming here," she said to Andrew. "You served in the human military for 23 years. You participated in 17 combat operations. Yet you seem completely normal." "I am normal," Andrew said, seeming genuinely confused by her observation. "But the soldiers we met," Zinpara continued, "they were aggressive, violent, comfortable with danger in ways that suggest psychological damage. You do not display those traits." Andrew was quiet for a moment. Helen reached over and took his hand. He squeezed it gently before speaking. "You want to understand how humans can be both peaceful and violent," Andrew said. "How I can be a grandfather who helps with homework and also someone who has killed other beings. The answer is simpler than you think. We compartmentalize. I do not understand that term. It means we separate different parts of our lives," Helen explained. "Andrew was a soldier when he needed to be a soldier. Now he is retired, so he is a husband, father, and grandfather. The skills and experiences from his military service still exist, but they are not active unless needed. Humans can switch between states," Zinpara said slowly. "Between peaceful civilian and combat soldier. Most humans never need to make that switch," Andrew said. "But all of us have the capacity for it. Earth's history required that adaptability. We evolved on a dangerous world where threats could appear suddenly and without warning. The ability to go from calm to combat ready quickly was a survival trait." He stood and retrieved a book from a shelf. It was old, pages yellowing with age. He opened it to show Zinpara photographs of soldiers from various time periods in human history. "This is my grandfather," Andrew said, pointing to a black and white image. "He fought in a war 70 years ago. Before that, my great-great-grandfather fought in a different war. If you go back far enough, every human family has warriors in their history. Not because we love violence, but because violence kept finding us. So you adapted to it," Zinpara said. "We had no choice," Helen added. "Species that could not handle violence on Earth did not survive to become spacefaring. Humans did. That is why we seem so comfortable with conflict. We have been managing it for millennia." The next day, Zinpara visited a military training facility. Andrew had arranged the tour through his old contacts. The base commander was Sergeant Nicole Pierce, a woman in her 30s with the same controlled intensity Zinpara had observed in other human soldiers. "Welcome to Fort Carson," Nicole said. "What would you like to see?" "I want to understand your training methods," Zinpara replied. "How you create soldiers from civilians." Nicole led her to a training ground where recruits were running through obstacle courses. They climbed walls, crawled through mud, carried heavy equipment over long distances. It looked brutal by Viridian standards, Yet the recruits showed determination rather than despair. "We do not make soldiers," Nicole explained. "We reveal them. Every human has the capacity for this. Our job is to teach them how to access and control it." She pointed to a recruit struggling with a rope climb. "See him? 3 months ago, he was a college student studying literature. Now watch." The recruit reached the top of the rope through sheer determination, muscles shaking with effort. When he descended, his fellow recruits cheered. The accomplishment seemed to matter more to them than it did to him. "Military training builds more than combat skills," Nicole said. "It builds confidence, teamwork, and the understanding that you are capable of more than you think." That recruit now knows he can push through difficulty. That knowledge will serve him whether he stays in the military or returns to civilian life. Zinpara watched recruits move through various exercises. What she had interpreted as cruelty from the outside now looked different. The training was difficult, but not arbitrary. Each challenge had purpose. The instructors were demanding but not abusive. They pushed recruits to their limits while ensuring those limits were never truly exceeded. "You make everyone go through this," Zinpara observed. "Not just soldiers. Your culture normalizes this level of physical and mental stress." "Not everyone," Nicole corrected, "but enough people that military service is understood and respected. Most humans know someone who served. That makes the military part of our society rather than separate from it." In the afternoon, Zinpara met with Dr. Richard Stone, a psychologist who specialized in military personnel. His office was surprisingly comfortable, filled with plants and soft lighting. Nothing about the space suggested it dealt with violence professionally. "You want to understand the human mind," Richard said after Zinpara explained her purpose. "Specifically, how we handle violence without being consumed by it. Yes, by Viridian standards, your soldiers show symptoms of severe disorders. Yet they function normally in society." Richard pulled up charts and data on his display. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. Do you know what that means?" "No. It means our ancestors hunted prey not by being faster or stronger, but by being more persistent. We would chase an animal for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. This required specific mental traits. The ability to focus on a goal despite discomfort. The capacity to continue when logic said to stop. What you might call obsessive." General MacThur did not believe in human exceptionalism. He had reviewed the same data as the rest of the High Command, watched the same footage, read the same psychological assessments. His conclusion differed from his colleagues. Humans were bluffing. Their reputation exceeded their actual capabilities. They had frightened the Empire through performance and manipulation, but in real combat, they would prove as vulnerable as any other species. MacThur commanded a faction within the Viridian military that considered the diplomatic approach cowardly. Humanity should be tested now, while they were still few in number and far from their homeworld. Better to discover their true capabilities before they spread throughout the galaxy. He planned his strike carefully. There was a human research station in the border zone, lightly defended, studying asteroid compositions. Only 20 humans present, most of them scientists. The perfect target to prove his theory. If humans were truly as dangerous as claimed, surely they would defend this facility with overwhelming force. If not, the Empire would learn the truth. MacThur dispatched a strike team of 40 soldiers, veterans all, with orders to capture the facility intact. He monitored the operation from his command ship, expecting either immediate human military response or quick surrender from the researchers. Neither happened. The research station was a modest facility built into an asteroid's surface. Most of its structure existed underground, with only communication arrays and docking ports visible from space. When the Viridian strike team approached, They detected life signs but no defensive systems. The station appeared as undefended as intelligence had suggested. The team docked and breached the main airlock without resistance. Team leader Varden reported to Macther that the facility seemed deserted. No personnel in the corridors, no automated defenses. Nothing but empty hallways lit by standard lighting. Then the hallways stopped being empty. Kevin Brooks had been a security officer for 5 years before taking the research station posting. It was supposed to be an easy assignment, watching over scientists who studied rocks. Most days involved checking equipment and making sure no one forgot to seal their pressure suits properly. Kevin had been a combat engineer before joining civilian security, which meant he understood explosives, defensive systems, and improvised weaponry better than most soldiers. When the Viridian strike team breached the station, Kevin had been in the security office. He watched them enter through the camera feeds, counted their numbers, assessed their weapons and formation. Then he triggered the emergency alert and sealed all interior bulkheads, trapping the Viridians in specific sections of the facility. Kevin did not panic. He had trained for hostile boarding scenarios, though he never expected to face one in reality. His mind shifted smoothly from casual security guard to combat mode, accessing skills and training he had not used in years. The research station had never been designed as a fortress, but it contained plenty of useful equipment for someone who knew what to do with it. Kevin moved through the sealed sections, using maintenance crawlways the Viridians did not know existed. He gathered supplies from the geology lab, explosive charges for sample collection, industrial cutting tools, containers of reactive chemicals used for analysis. Varden realized something was wrong when his team's communication system went offline. Then the lights cut out, plunging sections of the station into darkness. His soldiers activated tactical illumination, but the beams only showed empty corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity. The first explosive charge detonated behind the team, collapsing a section of tunnel and separating them. Varden tried to regroup, but more charges went off, creating bottlenecks and forcing his soldiers into smaller groups. Then Kevin appeared. He came from above, dropping through a maintenance hatch that Viridian scans had missed. He carried an improvised weapon, something built from station equipment that fired cutting torch fuel in short, controlled bursts. 3 Viridian soldiers went down before the rest could respond. Kevin vanished back into the maintenance system before they could target him. Varden reported the contact to Macther, his voice showing strain. They were not fighting the security guard. They were fighting something that moved through the station like it was his personal hunting ground. More charges detonated. Kevin had mined the facility, turning corridors into kill zones. The Viridian soldiers advanced cautiously, but caution only made them slower targets. Kevin picked them off in 1s and 2s, appearing from unexpected angles, attacking and retreating before they could coordinate responses. Varden's team found the research staff sealed in a reinforced laboratory. 20 scientists, terrified but unharmed. When the Viridians tried to use them as leverage, Kevin's voice came through the intercom system. "You can try to hurt them," Kevin said, his tone conversational. "But the moment you do, I stop trying to disable you and start trying to kill you. Your choice." Varden hesitated. This was not how the operation was supposed to proceed. They had overwhelming numerical advantage, superior training, better equipment. Yet one human had reduced his team to half strength and maintained control of the facility. He ordered a full assault on Kevin's last known position. 20 soldiers converged on the security office, expecting a final confrontation. The office was empty except for a data pad showing a simple message: wrong door. The explosion that followed collapsed the entire section, taking down 15 more Viridian soldiers. Kevin had rigged the office as a trap, betting correctly that the Viridians would commit too. Many soldiers to investigating it. Commander Jake Morrison received a distress signal while his ship was 3 hours away. The research station reported hostile boarding by Viridian forces. Casualties unknown. Situation contained but deteriorating. Jake's response was immediate and brutal. He diverted his ship at maximum speed, sent priority alerts to Earth Command, and prepared his crew for combat operations. By the time he arrived at the station, he had transformed from diplomatic officer to something much more dangerous. The Viridian strike team had finally cornered Kevin in the main operations center. He had run out of explosive charges and improvised weapons. 5 Viridian soldiers remained combat capable, plus Verdan. They had him surrounded with nowhere left to run. Then, Jake's ship arrived. The human vessel did not bother with communication protocols or warning shots. It simply disabled every Viridian ship in the area with precision weapons fire, crippling engines and life support while leaving hulls intact. The message was clear. Surrender or die. Jake led the boarding team personally. They moved through Macther's command ship like avenging spirits, overwhelming the crew without killing anyone. Jake wanted prisoners, wanted witnesses, wanted everyone to survive so they could tell others what happened when you attacked humans. He found Macther on the bridge, trying to organize a defense that had already failed. Jake walked up to him, and Macther saw his own death in the human's eyes. Not anger, not hatred, just cold calculation about whether killing this particular Viridian served any useful purpose. "You made a mistake," Jake said quietly. "You attacked humans who were doing nothing but peaceful research. You thought we were bluffing about our capabilities. Would you like me to show you exactly how wrong you were?" Macther said nothing. His survival instincts screamed at him to stay silent, to not provoke this predator any further. Jake took Macther's silence as consent. Over the next hour, he had the Viridian general watch footage from the research station. Every camera angle, every moment of Kevin's defense. 1 human security guard against 40 trained soldiers, and the soldiers had lost. Then Jake showed Macther something else. Combat footage from human military operations throughout their history. Wars that lasted years. Battles where humans fought despite overwhelming odds. Scenarios where defeat was certain, yet humans fought anyway because surrender was not in their vocabulary. "This is what you challenged," Jake said. "Not our technology, not our numbers. You challenged our will. You attacked people under Earth's protection and assumed we would respond proportionally. That was your mistake. Humans do not respond proportionally. We respond decisively." Captain Lisa Martinez was already broadcasting to all Viridian frequencies. Her message was clinical, detailed, and absolutely terrifying. She described human warfare capabilities without exaggeration or threat. She simply explained facts. Humans had fought wars that killed millions of their own species. They had developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. They had created doctrines of total war where nothing was off limits and victory was pursued regardless of cost. They had demonstrated repeatedly throughout their history that they would rather burn everything than accept defeat. "We do not want war with the Viridian Empire," Lisa said. "We prefer cooperation and mutual benefit. But understand this clearly. If you force us into conflict, we will not fight to win territory or resources. We will fight to ensure you never threaten us again. We will fight until you cannot fight back. This is not aggression. This is simply how humans approach existential threats." She paused, letting her words sink in across countless Viridian ships and stations. "Commander Morrison is returning General Macther to you alive and physically unharmed. This is mercy. This is restraint. This is us choosing peace despite provocation." 3 months after the incident at the research station, the galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The Viridian Empire formally requested military alliance with Earth. The treaty signing happened on a neutral station, broadcast across hundreds of worlds. Ambassador Zelmoth and human diplomat Margaret Foster signed the documents while their respective governments watched with very different emotions. The Viridians felt relief. They had survived first contact with humanity and managed to become allies rather than enemies. Other species watching the broadcast felt calculations running through their diplomatic computers. If the Viridian Empire, with all its military might, had chosen alliance over resistance, what did that say about human capabilities? The treaty included standard provisions for mutual defense and technology sharing, but it also included unusual clauses that revealed the true nature of the agreement. Human military personnel would wear clearly visible identification at all times when in Viridian space. Human soldiers would undergo additional psychological evaluation before interacting with alien civilians. Joint training exercises would be carefully monitored by both species. These rules existed not to protect Viridians from human violence, but to protect them from human unpredictability. The Empire had accepted that humans were valuable allies, but they never wanted to forget what those allies were capable of. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching ships arrive for the treaty ceremony. Viridian cruisers, elegant and powerful. Human vessels, smaller but somehow more menacing despite their size. Ships from a dozen other species, observers, and potential future partners, all trying to understand what this alliance meant for the broader galaxy. Ambassador Zelmoth approached from behind, his footsteps deliberately loud to avoid startling the human. He had learned that surprising humans was unwise, even in peaceful situations. "Commander Morrison," Zelmoth said, "I wanted to speak with you before the ceremony." Jake turned and smiled. Zelmoth still flinched slightly at the display of teeth, though he had learned it was meant as a friendly gesture. Some instincts were too deep to overcome completely. "Ambassador, what can I do for you?" "I want to understand something," Zelmoth said carefully. "Your species has succeeded beyond what any first contact protocols predicted. You terrified an empire into alliance without firing a shot in anger until we forced your hand. Was this your plan from the beginning?" Jake considered the question seriously. "Yes and no. Earth knew we would seem dangerous to other species. Our psychology, our history, our way of thinking, it all makes us aliens in ways that have nothing to do with biology. We could have tried to hide that, to present ourselves as gentle and non-threatening. But that would have been a lie, and lies make poor foundations for lasting relationships. So you chose to show us your worst aspects first." "Not our worst," Jake corrected. "Our most concerning. We showed you humans in combat mode because that is what frightened you most about us. But if you noticed, we also showed restraint. We showed honor. We showed that we follow rules even when rules are inconvenient. These things matter more than raw capability." Zelmoth's breathing organs fluttered in what might have been agreement. "Your soldier, Kevin Brooks. He could have killed all of General MacThur's strike team, but he chose to disable them instead. Kevin is a professional," Jake said. "He eliminated threats efficiently, but he understood that unnecessary killing would have consequences beyond the immediate situation. He fought to protect his people and maintain control, not to punish enemies. That is what training does. It gives you options beyond just violence. And yet the violence is always there," Zelmoth observed. "Always accessible when needed. Yes, that is the part you find most frightening, is it not? That humans can be peaceful, but never truly pacifist. We can choose mercy, but we never lose the capacity for other choices." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the ships maneuver and the station's traffic patterns. Finally, Zelmoth spoke again. "Do you understand what you have done to the galaxy? what this alliance means. Tell me your perspective, Jake said. Humanity has become the standard by which other species measure military capability. Governments across hundreds of worlds are now asking themselves if their forces could withstand human tactics. Some are attempting to adapt their training to human methods. Others are abandoning military expansion entirely, deciding that competing with humans is impossible. You have changed the strategic calculations of every spacefaring species. Is that a bad thing? I do not know yet, Zelmuth admitted. But it is certainly a significant thing. Lieutenant Derek Hayes had a new assignment. He was stationed at a Viridian military academy, teaching tactics and strategy to officers who would lead their species' forces. It was delicate work. The Viridians wanted to learn from human military success, but their psychology was fundamentally different. Derek stood in front of a class of 30 Viridian officers, all of them staring at him with expressions mixing respect and deep uncertainty. They knew his reputation. They had watched footage of his solo performance in the joint exercises. Now they had to learn from him without becoming like him. Today we will discuss unpredictability in combat, Derek began. He projected a tactical scenario on the display. Standard Viridian doctrine says to analyze threats, formulate optimal responses, and execute with precision. This works well against enemies who follow similar patterns. How many of you believe this approach would work against human forces? Not a single hand was raised. Derek smiled. Good. You understand the problem. Human soldiers are trained to exploit predictability. If you always choose the optimal tactical solution, humans will learn to predict those choices and counter them. So let me teach you something that will feel very uncomfortable for Viridian thinking. Sometimes the second best tactical choice is actually superior because it is unexpected. He spent 3 hours explaining concepts that violated every principle of Viridian military theory. Taking calculated risks. Making decisions based on intuition rather than pure analysis. Accepting that plans would fail and adapting in real time. The officers listened with growing distress. But they also took notes with obsessive attention to detail. At the end of the lesson, one officer asked the question that had been bothering them all. Lieutenant Hayes, can Viridians truly fight like humans? Our psychology is different. We evolved as prey species on a gentle world. Humans evolved as predators on a death world. Are we attempting something impossible? Derek considered his answer carefully. You cannot fight like humans because you are not human. But you can learn to fight effectively against opponents who do not think like you do. That is the real lesson. Not to become human warriors, but to understand that war involves more than logic. It involves adaptation, creativity, and the willingness to make hard choices quickly. He paused, then continued. Humans are not inherently better soldiers. We are just soldiers shaped by different circumstances. Your job is not to copy us, but to develop your own approach that accounts for how humans fight. Use your strengths. You are methodical, coordinated, and patient. These are valuable traits if applied correctly. The officers seemed to appreciate this perspective. Derek had learned something important during his time teaching. The goal was not to make Viridians into humans. The goal was to make them into better Viridians who understood what humans represented. Captain Lisa Martinez sat in a conference room with intelligence officers from 6 different species. They wanted to understand human warfare capabilities for their own strategic planning. Lisa had been assigned to give them that understanding without revealing information that could be used against Earth. How many humans would it take to conquer a planet? One officer asked bluntly. That depends on many factors, Lisa replied. What species controls the planet? What defensive capabilities do they have? What are the rules of engagement? Humans can fight very differently depending on constraints. Assume a world similar to a Viridian colony, the officer pressed. Standard defenses, population of 5 million. Full military commitment from Earth. Lisa did not like hypothetical invasion scenarios, but she understood why they needed answers. Fear bred preparation, and preparation was better than panic. Hypothetically, a few thousand human soldiers could control a planet if they were willing to use brutal methods. Tens of thousands could do it with more restraint. Hundreds of thousands could do it while minimizing civilian casualties and maintaining occupation long-term. But these numbers mean nothing without context. What context? Whether humans want to conquer the planet or simply neutralize it as a threat, Lisa explained. Humans are very good at destruction when that is the goal. We are less efficient at occupation and rebuilding. Different objectives require different force compositions. Another officer spoke up. Your species has considerable experience with warfare against your own kind. Does this make you more or less effective against alien species? More effective, Lisa said without hesitation. Humans have developed weapons and tactics to fight opponents who think exactly like we do. When we fight aliens who think differently, we have an easier time, not a harder one. We already know how to counter human tactics. Everything else is just variation.